evening and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, and we are broadcasting from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. I know that you are aware that we've had some technical issues about the last week, so I wanted to give you an update on that before we begin today's program. So for about the next week and a half, the program is pre-taped, meaning that I taped this Tuesday for today's broadcast on Wednesday, but they are all new all new programs with new information. So that doesn't mean we're not going to have great guests and have great conversations. It's just a little delayed. Now, then we'll be live going into next week, and I will make sure to inform you on that. But I don't want to discourage you from reaching out and commenting. You see the number on the bottom of your screen. Please reach out and let me know what you think of what we'll be discussing on today's broadcast, which is an update on Sheriff Allard. You remember that big issue with the Steuben County Legislature. I'll give you an update on that. We also have a lot of New York State issues to get to, and we'll also hopefully have the time to talk a little bit of international and national news as well. And on the program, speaking of great guests, we'll be talking with Tricia from Guthrie's Lasting Impressions program, so don't miss that. That'll be coming up in a few moments. Also, I want to say thank you to everybody who reached out asking about the program and also wishing everybody, all the viewers, a happy Thanksgiving. So thank you to everyone who reached out and contacted me at that number. I really appreciate it. You can also email me, frank@wydctv.com. That's frank@wydctv.com. So we've got a very, very busy show this morning, so we want to get right to it. I do need to take a short break right off the jump here. But then when we come back, we'll talk about Sheriff Allard and the repeal of resolution number 186-23. Does that make it sound wonky? Well, it is a little bit, but I think it's very important to get that information out to you. We also have, I think, another update on the Sheriff's Office, as well as the Steuben County Legislature in general. And again, some New York State issues that I think you'll find very informative. So again, reach out at that number on the bottom of the screen. We'd love to hear from you. Nothing's different, just a little delay. And if you do say a comment, I will do my best to read it on tomorrow's broadcast. That's what we'll do for now. Same with waves. We'll keep a day late wave count. But again, we will be returning live as soon as possible. You know how technical issues work. You know about equipment issues and shipping issues. So we are doing our best here, and I appreciate everybody that stuck with us and asked where we were and made calls and did all that. I really appreciate it. So let's take our first break, and then we will be back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, please stay with us. Welcome back to a all-new, pre-taped edition of Frankly Speaking. Thank you so much for joining us. We are from the Hesselson studio this morning on Market Street in Corning. I'm your host, Frank Acom. So a few months ago, I can't remember the exact day, but we had Sheriff Allard in, and we were talking about the controversy, if you will, with the Steuben County Legislature. This became a major issue. And yesterday we received an update on this from Sheriff Allard. I will say it gets in the weeds, but it's such an important issue, and so many people reached out when this was going on to us on the program. So again, to just keep you informed, I know you may have heard this, but I don't know if you've heard it in as much detail. And I also do want to remind you, coming up after this, we'll be talking with Tricia from Guthrie's Lasting Impressions program. Okay, here we go. On Monday, November 27th, the Steuben County Legislature repealed resolution number 186-23, which would have imposed an unprecedented requirement on the county sheriff to obtain liability insurance against lawsuits arising from the sheriff's office's performance of official duties. The repealed resolution would have required the sheriff to immediately purchase millions of dollars of insurance at his own cost, out of pocket. If he did not, the county would not allow him to complete the duties of sheriff and would withhold his pay. The legislature compared the sheriff to a contractor, not a duly elected. Remember, that was one of the big sticking points, not a duly elected county official. And that's why so many people were upset that you do have a man that was elected and then there was no public input on this, no opportunity, because it was all an executive session, to have the conversation. But I'll continue. And ignore the fact that the sheriff is and was covered by the county blanket insurance policy. The sheriff welcomes the repeal of this resolution, which was one of two resolutions passed on September 25th. Wow, so September 25th is when it goes back to, and I want to say we ended up talking to the sheriff just a few days after, might have been the next day, to discuss this. So there were two, if you recall, and I'm sure you are, you're well informed, there were two resolutions that day on September 25th that were affecting the sheriff's status and operations. The other September 25th resolution rescinded the county's duty under the public officer law and county local law to indemnify the sheriff for legal fees and liability incurred in the performance of his official duties. Resolution 186-23 was passed with virtually no notice to the sheriff or public debate. And we'll get back to that other one in just a moment, okay? The indemnify, excuse me, I have such trouble with that word. Resolution 186-23 was passed with virtually no notice to the sheriff or public debate, and that was such a sticking point. Even people who reached out to the show said, I don't exactly understand what's going on, but we did vote for this man. We should have had a say in it. That was one of the major sticking points that we heard from many people, many guests on this program as well. The sheriff was given no notice of its intended repeal, and the resolution, if it had been allowed to take effect, would effectively have left the county without a sheriff. The legality of both September 25th resolutions has been challenged by the sheriff in New York State Supreme Court, and at the time of today's repeal, both have been enjoined from taking effect by a Supreme Court justice. Even with today's repeal, the remaining September 25th resolution, stripping the sheriff of indemnification under the public officer law, remains under legal challenge. And we will, of course, keep you updated on that and keep you informed. Underscoring the serious detrimental impact that losing indemnification could have on the sheriff's ability to carry out his public safety duties. The New York State Sheriff's Association, which represents sheriffs across every county in New York State, has asked the justice hearing the sheriff's challenge for permission to file a, quote, friend of the court, end quote, brief, arguing in support of the sheriff's position. See, this is where, it does get a little wonky, but again, I do feel it's very important. NYSSA's papers to the court make it clear that the organization is concerned the Steuben County Legislature's actions could ultimately have a drastic impact on law and law enforcement and public safety throughout the state. NYSSA's request to the court is available at the Steuben County Sheriff's app and the website under News and Press Release. And that's sheriff.steubencountyny.gov. In spite of the ongoing dispute over the legislature's September 25th resolutions, Steuben County residents should know, and they want to make this very clear, that the sheriff's office remains committed above all else to its public safety mission, and the sheriff, his deputies, and all civilian personnel continue to carry out the full range of the office's responsibilities and services. For more information about the Sheriff's Office, you can follow them on Facebook or visit their website. So there is your update from a story that it's hard to believe was all the way back in September, but very controversial in the Steuben County area. A lot of chatter about that. So one of the resolutions repealed. We're waiting to hear the legal challenge to the second. Also, since we're talking about the Sheriff's Office, who we know is always active in the community, we talk to the sheriff quite frequently, and I'm going to have him on when we return to live guest, because he's such a great live guest. When we return to live, that's when we'll have him back on. So I'm going to reach out to him just to talk about this and all the issues. We'd like to get an update from the sheriff and Schramm in Chemung County as frequently as we can. I should also highlight, like I said, even though these are pre-taped for about a week, we are going to have many special guests coming up, and I've already have, for when we go live, nearly every day schedule. We're getting back into the season of, talking about politics, that holiday season. But when we come back, I'm going to take another short break. No, I can't, because we're going to be talking with Trisha, from Guthrie's Lasting Impressions program next. So in a little bit, we'll be talking about the Toys for Tots Fill the Patrol Car and Coats for Kids event, so you can find out how you can help. We do have a couple New York State issues as well. As always, reach out to me. You see the number on the bottom of the screen. And we will be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. We are being joined this morning by Guthrie. Good morning.
Good morning.
Let's go to you on camera. So tell us, November is traditionally a month of gratitude, right? Yeah. How does this tie into the ethos of Guthrie's Lasting Impressions program?
Well, you're right. November is a month of gratitude. A lot of times people reflect on what they're most grateful for. Thanksgiving is right around the corner. So people many times will go around the table and say, oh, I'm so thankful for this. I'm grateful for my health, right? And so Lasting Impressions feeds right into that in the sense that it gives us an opportunity to recognize the caregivers, and specifically our caregivers at Guthrie, who have made a lasting impression on our patients' lives.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that. Tell us about Guthrie's Lasting Impressions program and what's the purpose of this program?
Well, many times when people have an experience with a caregiver and it's really positive, they want to give back. They want to figure out how they can pay it forward and how can they express that gratitude. And so Lasting Impressions was developed out of that thought. How do we allow our patients to give back and to kind of pay it forward for the next patient that's
to
going
show
through
their thanks.
Yeah, that's going through a difficult diagnosis. So this allows them to recognize a caregiver that's gone above and beyond and express their gratitude and say, hey, you did a great job. I really appreciate it. And you made a lasting impression on my life.
And that must feel great.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
How does Guthrie's Lasting Impressions program provide a meaningful way to honor the caregivers? How do we honor them?
Yeah. So there's an online form that we use, and people write their story and they share their story with us and say, okay, this caregiver was with me in my time of need. Maybe they had a difficult diagnosis. Maybe this caregiver showed gratitude or showed compassion in a time that was really challenging for them, and they were there. And so they are able to go on and tell us that story, share that experience that they had, and then we're able to recognize that caregiver, which is incredibly meaningful to the caregiver.
Of course.
So it's just been
it's just got to be rewarding, because it's such a difficult job, I would think, an emotional job. So it must just be nice to, I'm not even saying a pat on the back, just be recognized for their hard work and dedication.
Yeah, we all need that sometimes,
I know.
right? So
yes.
This is a great opportunity for them to be recognized that way and feel good about the work that they're doing. And it motivates them and propels them to continue to do that for every patient that we serve.
Now, how can the community, me and people watching, how can we participate and show gratitude to the caregivers?
Yes, we developed a website, and it's you can visit our Guthrie website at guthrie.org /lasting-impressions, and there's a form there that you can fill out, share your story, and recognize the caregiver that's made this lasting impression in your life.
And if people want to donate to the Lasting Impressions program, how does that support the program itself?
Yeah, absolutely. Guthrie is a nonprofit health system, and so it allows us to use those donations to put them right back into work for our community and for our patients. So we invest in new technologies with those donations, we build great facilities, and we ensure that that same level of quality care is available to the patients that we serve. So they don't have to travel out of the area. They can get that quality care right here at home. And
I know I kind of mentioned it already, but what do these little acts of kindness mean to the people that are part of the caregivers, essentially?
Yeah, it's like you said, it's meaningful. People love to be recognized for the good work that they're doing. It keeps them motivated, and it builds that sense of gratitude all across our organization. And so people, our caregivers really appreciate that and continue to do good work as a result of that recognition.
Well, they do such amazing work. So how can the viewers and myself, how can we make a donation to the Lasting Impressions program?
Well, visit our website at guthrie.org /lasting-impressions, and there's a form there that you can fill out and share your story with us. And our caregivers are recognized in front of their peers. There's usually a little pinning ceremony, and we have these great lasting impression pins, and they're beautiful. They're shaped like a heart, and you'll notice they have fingerprints on them because truly they leave an impression on people's hearts.
Yeah, we'll show that at close up. Well, thanks so much for being on the program and telling us about this amazing thing that you're doing to recognize our caregivers.
My pleasure. Thank you, and have a great Thanksgiving.
You too. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox, broadcasting from the Hesselson studio. I'm your host, Frank Acom. It's a pre-taped but all new Frankly Speaking. Thank you for joining us. If you're just joining us, we are pre-taped for about a week, and then we'll be back live. But it's never an excuse not to contact me. There's a number on the bottom of the screen. Reach out at any time. Thank you again to Tricia from Guthrie's Lasting Impressions program. That sounds like such a nice what would you even say, organization, a nice program. There's the pin. They gave me a lasting impressions pin, so I really appreciate that. I mentioned just quickly how you can help the Toys for Tots fill the patrol car and the Coats for Kids events. Steuben County Sheriff Jim Allard reports that on Saturday, December the 2nd, this Saturday, deputies will host the Toys for Tots Fill the Patrol Car and Coats for Kids event at both Irwin and Hornell Walmart plazas from 10 a.m. to noon. Toys and children's coats will be collected for Steuben County children. So from 10 to noon at either Irwin or the Hornell Walmart. The toys will be distributed to Steuben County children in need, and the new or gently used coats are distributed to Steuben County school districts for children in need of cold weather clothing. This event has grown over the past 4 years. Wow, it's been 4 years. And the generosity and charitable spirit at both events last year was overwhelming and indicative of the sense of community in our county. And we talk about the importance of community, and that's why I wanted to mention it to you. We talk on this program so often about one of our goals is getting back to that idea of community service, community activities. Toys for Tot donation boxes will be posted in both the lobby of the Sheriff's Office and the County Office Building in Bath for those that wish to donate but cannot attend the event. And of course, the Sheriff Allard wishes to thank all who participate, donate, visit, assist, fund, and work to make both of these events a success, which will benefit hundreds of Steuben County families during this holiday season. We're going to have so many different promotions for you to help our community during the holiday season. Speaking of Steuben County, before we take our break, we were talking before about the issue with the legislature. Well, the legislature have agreed, the Steuben County legislature, to the use of the $533,319 in the opioid settlement fund. And I mention this because these are some organizations we've talked to in the past. Casa Trinity will receive $253,957 to expand Adventures in Recovery Services. Catholic Charities, Steuben, Livingston, $120,000 to support the Prevention Coalition's Opioid Committee and harm reduction and prevention efforts. And finally, Family Service Society Incorporated, $159,362 to fund a part-time prevention specialist, obtain a van for transportation to increase outreach efforts and prevention counseling at the Corning Youth Center. We talk about the various drug epidemics so often on this program. I thought I would highlight that before we go to break. Now we're going to talk about New York State issues and hopefully maybe a little bit of international if we don't run too late. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. And we are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We are broadcasting from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. We are pre-taped, but all new. And thank you so much for joining us. And again, thank you for everyone who reached out as we were having our technical difficulties. I can't tell you how much all the comments meant to me, so thank you. All right, back to, I guess you could say, New York State issues. And this is almost a public service announcement, but it's kind of shocking. During COVID, if you had to renew your license, you basically had to sign off and say, yeah, my eyes are okay, but I'll get them checked later when things calm down, because they didn't want you there in person. Well, now because of that, the DMV could suspend 51,000 driver's licenses over this guideline. The State Department of Motor Vehicles could suspend the licenses of around 51,000 drivers as soon as on Friday. So warning, if they are not in adherence with a guideline from the COVID-19 pandemic that lets some put their vision test off. I was actually one of those people, but luckily I did recently get my vision checked. The guideline allowed drivers to self-certify their vision to renew their licenses, but it only included drivers whose license expired between March 1st, 2020 and August 31st of 2021 and was in place to reduce crowds at the DMV. Drivers who self-certified and have not provided proof their vision meets requirements to drive will have their license suspended on Friday. I think the biggest problem with this is the people that just have forgotten about it. Meaning, when did I have to renew? Because it was such an easy task, I found, and you just said, yeah, no, everything's fine. Give me my license. So I'm not sure. There's a lot of people that aren't going to be driving around on Friday and get in a lot of trouble for something that they forgot about that happened around 3 years ago. So keep that in mind. It's a public service announcement, but it's also to show you how, I guess, time changed over the last 3 years. Okay, so let's talk about New York for a moment. Do I have time? No, I mean, that's New York, but let's go a little bit more in depth. I know, because we're going to take another short break. But before that, I think right before we had our technical difficulties, I brought to you the fact that Politico was reporting that former governor, disgraced governor, Andrew Cuomo, was thinking about running against Mayor Adams in New York City. And now there's an update on that where Eric Adams said he doesn't believe that's going to happen. Now, I don't know. That would technically be the opponent. So would he have the inside information? But he said, we often talk. I don't see him running for mayor. I think he is looking at his next political move. And there's a lot of things he can look at. But I have to be ready to run New York. And that is what I'm focused on doing right now. So everybody has made it clear that Cuomo wants to run for something. That he is not going to go gently into the night. Now, the problem is when you see the reasons, and I say disgrace, but you see the reasons people give why he shouldn't run. Very, very little isn't mentioned about the nursing home scandal. And to me, that it was such a shocking number and such a shocking move that should also be very frequently mentioned when talking about disgraced former governor Cuomo. So Cuomo has indicated to allies this month that he would be interested in a mayoral bid. And voters in New York City received a poll testing a variety of comeback messages for the former governor because he does have a lot of money on hand. So they sent out a poll wondering, dipping their toe in the water, if you will. So you've got to take what Mayor Adams is saying with a grain of salt because that would be his opponent. Cuomo, 65, has not ruled out a return to politics. What is it? Because Elias Spitzer did the same thing too, right? With disgraced governors, where he was going to run, what was it, for comptroller, and then Anthony Weiner was going to come back. I guess it's, some would argue, power hungry. I don't know what that is in someone that, well, anyway, so we'll be keeping a close eye on that. If former governor Andrew Cuomo decides to run for mayor, or what, if not mayor, what will it be? Well, weigh in at that number on the bottom of your screen. I know we can't vote for New York City mayor, so would you vote for Cuomo for comptroller? Lieutenant governor would be probably a stretch. Congress? I don't know. Let's take a short break. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox. Stay with us. Broadcasting from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. I'm your host, Frank Acom. This is Frankly Speaking with a pre-taped but all-new edition. Back to New York State issues for a moment. There's a post, or I should say a piece from the New York Post called "The Legislature Sends a Clear Signal to Shoplifting Thugs." Go for it. And I like this piece because we talk about the bail reform laws, and we talk about this idea that we tie the police officers' hands, but coddle the criminals. Their argument is that shoplifting is such a major issue in New York that it's driving businesses out and keeping businesses away. And instead of trying to correct the problem, Albany is throwing up their hands. Here's what they said. Shoplifting, including a major chunk by organized crews of dangerous criminals, cost New York's retailers $4.4 billion last year and will likely hit harder this year. Yet the legislature, as on every other cost imposed by our disastrous criminal justice reforms, has done next to nothing. So think about that. All these reforms where you have, for instance, with the changing of the age, that a lot of young kids are being recruited into gangs because they can't get in trouble. So now if they go shoplifting, they know they can't get in trouble. We had a really clear example of basically a gang of young people pickpocketing and robbing people at this bar in New York City. And when the bartender said, "I'm going to call the cops," they said, "There's nothing they can do." So you're telling me they're not a major part of this? Or, again, bail reform, they steal something. You can literally go and walk in and say, hey, I'm going to do it again. I got to go get a suit for my next court date, and there's nothing they can do to hold you. But I'll continue. Literal billions of dollars were stolen from retailers, big and small, alike, across the Empire State. This isn't just affecting the city, even though this is coming from the New York Post. It's not just affecting the city. It's affecting the whole state. But the best our Albany overlords, is how they put it, could do was to create a task force to study ways of combating the scourge of organized retail theft rings. Yeah, some of it is organized, some of it not so organized. As if there's some mystery here. How can we fix this problem? And Governor Hochul vetoed the bill, as she has a host of similar set up a task force measures. So it's just set up a task force, as if no one knows what's causing this. It's our easy laws. Well, okay, easy for the criminals, mind you, not for the police. The question now is, will she push legislators to do something substantial? I have my doubts. The bill, because it's not good PR for a governor that wants the virtue signal, right? The bill was a mere gesture to show New York voters, around 63%, remember this, 63% of New York voters, whom see crime as a very serious problem in our state. Well, look at the reason Lee Zeldin did so well against Governor Hochul is because he ran on public safety. He ran on actually punishing criminals. And they want their lawmakers to care. 63% see crime as a very serious problem. But the actual signal from lawmakers is different and brutally clear. Don't you dare even think about organized shoplifting as a crisis, let alone hope for an actual law enforcement way to stem it. Or prosecutors would work to keep crooks off the street, or judges who don't conspire to see thugs walk free. The lack of real reaction from New York's leaders tells citizens that the state and its officers are unwilling and increasingly unable, I think is a very key point, to protect them from lawbreakers. It tells businesses that massive sums can be stolen from them, and no official will lift a finger to stop it. And this is businesses already dealing with those stifling taxes and the regulatory environment that they have to deal with. So you'll have you'll have businesses leaving the state or definitely not looking into moving to the state, and driving the mom and pops into the ground, and the big guys to think about abandoning the city and the state altogether. And it leaves every New Yorker in deadly danger, especially when you think about the poor retailers. Already a tough enough job, now having to deal with the real thought of violence and worry about their safety against these organized groups and not so organized groups. So will our governor fight to pass legislation that died this year to make assaults on retail workers a felony? Or the also sidelined bill to kick petty larcenies up to felonies if committed within 2 years of a prior conviction? Until Hochul starts putting her energy and political capital behind moves like that, it's public safety and the Empire State's lagging economy be utterly damned. It's just one of many reasons why people are leaving the state. And I'm not happy about talking about this so frequently, but this affects businesses, which affects jobs. I mean, how many examples do we need to have where people start to go, wow, maybe this is my major issue for leaving, or this is my major issue, or all of them combined. It is a very scary thought that all Albany can essentially do is say, don't shoplift. That's got to send a real boost of confidence to the major retailers, but also the mom and pops. Okay, when we come back, we're going to get away from New York issues. I do want to remind you, as always, you can reach out to me. You see the number on the bottom of your screen. Reach out to me if you would like to weigh in on these or any other issue that we've been bringing up all morning long, or just the issues of the day. But anyway, stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. And we are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, and we are broadcasting from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. Did you hear that a group of anti-Israel protesters now plan to quote-unquote flood the Christmas tree lighting in Rockefeller Center? Now that would be, and full disclosure, we're pre-taping this, But as you're watching this on Wednesday, that would be today. So Kirsten Fleming from the Post says, how to win hearts and minds, especially at the holiday season. Step 1. Do not do what the chaos merchants behind organizations like, quote, Within Our Lifetime are doing with increasing frequency and impunity. That is, interrupt our commutes by squatting on highways and bridges and at train stations for hours. Yeah, I never understood why that became, for many organizations, a tactic. Talk about getting people to turn on you quickly when you just want to get home. Oof. Now, messing with cherished holiday traditions. Within Our Lifetime is a group which builds itself as a Palestinian-led community organization, and other agitators are proudly Scrooging, as they put it, their way through the festive calendar and hurting hardworking New Yorkers and tourists in the process, all in the name of quote-unquote activism. They did this during the Macy's Day Parade. They splashed red paint all over the beloved New York Public Library flagship, causing $75,000 of disgusting damage. And an anti-Zionist organization shut down the Manhattan Bridge on the holiday weekend. Now, what is their latest act of resistance? On Wednesday, today, Within Our Lifetime, they plan to throw the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree lighting into disarray. Quote, this is what they posted online. Flood the tree lighting for Gaza, reads the group's 100, listen to this, on their Instagram page, 135,000 followers. Now, it's interesting that they use the word flood because, as Ms. Fleming points out, the same word was used by Hamas on the October 7th attack, in which some 1,400 innocents in Israel were killed. So she suggests this is a new war on Christmas as well as on the West. Some of the enthusiastic comments to this post by that group urge people to bravely mask up and disrupt. Those are their values: mayhem, done with the privilege of anonymity. This is America, and these groups are entitled to demonstrate and broadcast their message, however convoluted that message is. But it's a method that's objectionable. They could lead sanctioned, peaceful protests to bring eyeballs and empathy to their cause. However, that's not their aim. They want to intimidate and bully into submission as they uproot law and order. But law enforcement, standing by as protesters receive a slap on the wrist, or worse, a giant payout from the city, is only inviting vigilante responses in kind. And that's why I'm sorry that I skipped ahead, because she has a lot more. I would find this for yourself at the New York Post. It's permission to let this tactic become the norm. And I think she raises such a good point. The idea that they obviously don't want to win over people to their cause, which is normally what an organization does. They just want chaos and mayhem. And this has been a tactic for quite some time. But boy, yeah, you interrupt someone's commute, take longer to get home, or you screw up holiday plans as they did, or now messing with tradition, holiday traditions. Again, I think it proves that they're not really looking to change hearts and minds, as so many organizations say. It really is about the chaos. All right, one last short break, and then we'll be back to wrap things up here on Frankly Speaking on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. And we are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, thank you so much for joining us on this pre-taped but all-new edition. We'll be back live next week. I'll keep you updated on that. I also got some pretty big announcements coming up, not just the special guests that we'll have, but also really something I think is going to be really, really special for the holiday. I'll keep you updated on that. We just got to set a couple last-minute things in stone, and then I'll be telling you all about it. But I think you'll be just as excited as I am. So there's so much to cover. We focused on New York. We've focused on Steuben County local issues. And now we've been talking about international issues. Alan Dershowitz has a piece saying that the media ignore Hamas's long, deliberate strategy to increase civilian deaths. And we talked about this extensively on the program, but this idea of using the residents as human shields. Hamas has a calculated policy of doing everything to increase deaths among the civilians of Gaza. Besides deliberately using civilians as human shields, it denies them the opportunity to use the vast complex of tunnel shelters it has built to protect its terrorists and its valuable hostages. Israel, on the other hand, and this is a very important point, and I'm going to kind of piggyback off of this in just a second, but they have spent hundreds of millions of dollars constructing shelters for its civilians, as well as prioritizing the development of the Iron Dome, designed to protect Israeli civilians from Hamas rockets. It should come as no surprise, therefore, that despite Hamas's desire to kill as many civilians as possible and Israel's desire to kill as few civilians as possible, the number of Gazan civilians killed exceeds the number of Israeli civilians killed in the conflict. And what they tied into is the media and how they've presented this, And they say until and unless the media starts telling the whole truth about Hamas's culpability, its murder of civilians will continue. And it's not, look, it goes back to the hospital bombing. They run in the media with Hamas's narrative. And that's why I said I was going to piggyback off of that. This coming from the Post editorial board. Even a group that is deeply hostile to Israel, named, Human Rights Watch, deeply hostile to Israel, they have had to admit that that rocket was fired from Hamas into the hospital. It's now indisputable. But rest assured, this won't be the last time the major media outlets let Hamas guide the narrative. HRW, again, Human Rights Watch, reports on the tragedy saying, quote, it resulted from an apparent rocket-propelled munition, such as those commonly used by Palestinian armed groups. So see what I mean by deeply hostile to Israel? Because that armed groups, they're talking about armed groups. They're talking about terrorists like Islamic Jihad, the group Hamas's operatives blamed in an audio clip intercepted and published by Israel. Even last week, as recently as last week, even though there was study after study done by Israel, after us proving where those rockets came from, as early or last week, however you want me to put it, the Times was reporting the horror's cause as contested. Does it just not want to admit its colossal error this whole time? And of course, we've talked about really no evidence would ever satisfy someone like far left Representative Rashida Tlaib, who's, as the New York Post put it, really has went down the down the rabbit hole of full-on trutherism over the attack. Yeah, doubling down, tripling down. But with HRW now admitting the truth, there's no moral cover left for Tlaib and the anti-Semites who hang out with her on Facebook. It's critical, as Israel continues its hostage exchange with Hamas, to remember that the Jewish state is battling murderers and war criminals, not righteous freedom fighters, no matter how hard elite institutions seek to suppress that fact. And we don't have time to get to all of it, but there's also a piece here about, and it's by Glenn H. Reynolds, and it says, George Floyd's death led to a racial reckoning. Where's the anti-Semitism reckoning? I think that's a very, very good point. I can't believe we are out of time for today's edition of Frankly Speaking. It feels good to be back. We've had so much to talk about, and then now I'm going to go through a little bit of housekeeping. I will mention next week, I know I don't have my calendar in front of me, but next week, I know this is a fan favorite. We should be back live at this point. Former Congressman Joe Sempolinski will be joining us on Thursday of next week. I wanted to mention that to you. Also, something that we've been trying to keep you informed of, and I know it's a ways away, but we've been talking about Thurston quite a bit. We've had guests on talking about the sludge issue. There is going to be a report on the phase 2 water test results. I know a lot of people have been taking this very seriously, so I wanted to mention it to you. And I haven't had a chance since they sent it to me, but it's coming up on Wednesday, December 20th at 6 p.m. at the Thurston Town Hall. So again, I know that's a ways off, but it's going to be here sooner than you know it. So I didn't want to forget, and I wanted to bring that to you. Also, I would really like to thank, as we just wrap up here, thank Trisha from Guthrie's Lasting Impressions program. That is an amazing thing they're doing, and I really appreciate them being on the show. One other thing, as we are suggesting you mark your calendars, it's the 21st annual Winter Fantasy Bazaar and Craft Sale coming up this Saturday from 9 a.m. till 3 p.m. There'll be breakfast and lunch, professional vendors, sweet shops, food, free admission. This is the First United Methodist Church, 1034 West Broad Street in Horseheads. So again, that's coming up this Saturday, 9 a.m. till 3 p.m. The Winter Fantasy Bazaar and Craft Sale. Free admission, First United Methodist Church in Horseheads. Those are some things I was able to catch up on. I wanted to catch up on as we had our technical difficulties. If you are just joining us, you're wondering what's going on, let me just reiterate this before we head out the door. We're hoping to be back live as of some point next week. Right now, this is pre-taped, but it's all brand new. It's all new. It just pre-taped the day before. So I'm recording this Tuesday for today, Wednesday. So maybe the weather will look a little bit different on the roof cam, whatever the case may be. But it is going to be a little bit different. So, but I don't want that to stop you from reaching out and commenting. If there's a topic that you think, we had a week without Frankly Speaking, here's something I want you to bring up, or have you found out anything about this, or can we talk to this? Because as I've said from the beginning, we want to make this about community. So, if you're saying, wow, Frank, I don't know if you pay attention to Town X, but there's this controversy going on, or there's this issue going on. Could you interview the mayor or the councilman? I would love to, but sometimes it doesn't always get to my desk. So please reach out at that number, or if, as always, you want to just say something about what we've discussed today, whether the New York issues, the international issues. Maybe you're saying, hey, wait, we didn't talk on just national issues. Well, we did a little bit, but yes, we try to cover as much as we possibly can. I know we had a lot to catch up on, so I really do appreciate you joining me this morning on the program. And if you comment on the bottom of the screen, I will try my best tomorrow to read that, I should say, on the program. And again, I know I said at the very beginning, I'll tell you how much it meant to me to everybody reach out to say that what happened to the show, or just to say happy Thanksgiving. We have so many loyal viewers, and I really do appreciate that. So I guess it's a little late, but happy Thanksgiving to you as well. I hope it was a wonderful one. I hope you had a great time and fun, safe. Oh, and for all our hunters, I did receive some great hunting stories and some great pictures. So thank you for sending those in. And I know season's still ongoing, so good luck. If you haven't already had good luck, but if you did have luck, please send them in. I'd love to see those photos. That's always a lot of fun. But we will be back tomorrow morning starting at 7 a.m. with Frankly Speaking. As I said, we have guests lined up these next few weeks, so you don't want to miss it, and it's all new. Then I will keep you informed when we are going live. So don't worry, you'll know. But it doesn't really affect anything. The only difference is I'm going to talk about what you had to say a day later. That's not too bad. So reach out to me. All right. Have a great day, everyone. And please join us tomorrow morning starting at 7 a.m. for Frankly Speaking. Only on WYDC TV Big Fox. I look forward to joining you again tomorrow, and I look forward to being live again in about a week. So until then, have a great day, and we will see you bright and early tomorrow morning.